must come up with some document that states why we shall be free. The men, radicals you may say, who were chosen astonish me. And when I'm astonished, it's not always a fine scene. These 5 men were Adams, Franklin, Livingston, Sherman, and me. Dear Lord, if I had but one chance to have a word that changed the decision, just one, it would have been said right then and there. But these ideas that fat old men make on hot, smelly days in an enclosed room in Philadelphia in the year of 1776 often stay as they are. And this one in particular was no exception. It was now that certain committee had to select one man, just one, to draft this declaration. When a group consists of such men as this one does, it is either bound for disaster or bound for brilliance. First off, Adams tells us all that Ben Franklin should do it, which he says he's too old to, and counters that saying Adams should do it. And this goes on for a while. But in the end, it came upon my shoulders, and Adams said that I shall do it. And I had really no say to say, no, I can't. So when I arrived in my musty inn, I plopped on the bed and yelled at myself. I cursed at the damned world. I cursed at that damned Adams, and I cursed at the damned Congress. If it wasn't for the idea of a new country, I wouldn't be here. I sat in a chair and wrote for an hour. No use. All the parchment lay on the floor. Again I cursed at Adams. No wonder every man hates him. I hurled myself onto the wall, to no avail, and then began to cry. I often wonder why men cry, why water falls from a face when he hears of sorrow, or feels pain, or is just frustrated. Is it a way of saying, I am doing this wrong, this is all a puzzle? Maybe it is. But when you start to weep, there is nothing you can do to stop yourself. So I wailed on and on for a good half hour, and then I stopped, for wailing comes to no use. And I was alone without my wife in this time, and I often feel so alone and so desolate. And the only thing that I'd have to help myself was this instrument, the violin. And I always feel myself when I play. My fingers flying across each individual string. And every time I do this, I feel calm. I feel alone. And even though I feel alone, I feel strong. And I feel that I can do things. And that is what I do on a night like this. A night when my soul is in a rant, when there is no end to frustration. And I do that for what seems like an eternity, even though it might not have been an hour. It seems that whenever you do an activity you enjoy doing, you are always torn away from it. When I played the violin tonight, I felt brilliant. But when I glanced at the papers on the floor, and I glanced at the quill and the ink well next to it, I murmured to myself, Thomas, soon you will be at home with Martha. But that won't happen unless you write this silly declaration. So get to it. And that is how, somehow, I did it. Well, I didn't really finish the declaration one night, but I did begin writing it. I shall use this quill to bring the colonies to complete freedom from the tyranny of Great Britain. And so I made a map, a little diagram about the Second Continental Congress, and this is me delivering my...
Where are you? Sorry,
This is me delivering my speech to the Second Continental Congress, and this is just a handful of them. So right here is the president, whose name is John Hancock, and he's from Massachusetts. And this line of 4 people is the rest of the committee, which is Roger Sherman, John Adams, Roger Sherman, Ben Franklin, and then William Livingston. And so I would stand at the podium and I just said it to them, and I just yelled out and I told them, this is why we should be free, and this is how we're going to do it. And it somehow convinced them all to do it and signed the Declaration of Independence. So on the day that we all signed it, I had another journal entry, and I'll just read an excerpt from that. Rarely has a man that has been through such disappointment and frustration been rewarded the esteem of an entire country. This morning, the Second Continental Congress agreed to sign the Declaration I spent hour after hour drafting, and it has been ratified and will be sent to England. The information cannot be disclosed to the public. I deeply hope that no of these wandering eyes will fall on this specific entry until tomorrow, but my emotions are already flying high. Never have I been given such a responsibility. Never have I taken a risk that could kill me if the wrong information falls in the wrong hands. And never will I be more glad to have this finished. I guarantee that if these damned British triumph in this war, I will not only be disappointed and humiliated, but I will also be dead. I have no doubt that by the time the British might have won, my head would already be threaded into a noose. But why think of the risks? The rewards are colossal. For if we are the ones that triumph, I will feel the satisfaction of aiding my country to independence. And I hope that King George III feels the direct opposite as I do. I hope he cries and cries and cries, and I hope that all those English nincompoops have him tarred and feathered. Public service will coincide with your careers, and you must take it as it is. Whether that means taking absences for the man that has made you. For what I have done, though some, a rabble of not intelligent, some as they are, may say it's not much, brought rigid work. But it is important that you are able to reap the rewards, and I hope this is what I will do, because I, not John Adams, drafted this declaration, and so I will be the one that has credit for it. I can only wait to see what Martha will say. Such swooning she will. It makes me long for good old Monticello. And Monticello was like a haven for me, and it still is. And I designed it myself, and I would just spend my whole day in the study just drafting and drafting. I always loved it there.
What's Monticello?
So I look forward to traveling back to Monticello and seeing my children in beloved wife. These past few years, I and Martha have gone through such family trauma. Last year, just weeks to the day, our daughter Jane perished. Never have you seen a man fall into such deep mourning and distress. I don't believe I left my chambers for days, and now I've been away for months on end, and that only puts a damper on the sour mood. Deeply do I regret this, for it is of my knowledge that Martha has fallen ill and is often bedridden. It will feel tremendous to be home. I can't help but love the sounds and the smells, the sights and all other such beauties that make up my wonderful home of Monticello. The next few years I did multiple other things. In 1779, I was elected by my peers to be the wartime governor of Virginia. And I was actually looked down upon for the British attacked my home Monticello when I was working there. And it was the Battle of Chancellorsville and Charlottesville. And I had to flee, and everyone said, "You have to do this." And I began to question the rewards of public service. But after working so hard on it, I began to realize that, yes, this is what I'm born to do. This is what every man should do. I also wrote Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, and what this granted was that as a state, the state should be able to do what they can do to help the state, and this gave freedom for religious freedom to everyone there. So in 1781, the Revolutionary War was mostly over. There was the Battle of Yorktown, and as a fellow Virginian, I wanted to write to George Washington and congratulate him on his work as Commander-in-Chief of the Army. So I wrote a letter to him on October 25th to congratulate him. Dear General Washington, in the entire world there is no man who can offer you more tribute and praise than I can. For a man from the rambling 13 colonies to defeat the greatest military in the world is incredible. Imagine Williamsburg, say 30 years ago. Would you have imagined men running around drunk and little children running around yelling, "We're free, we're free"? For that is what it's like now. Would you have imagined that the French would be devoted allies rather than fearsome enemies? After hearing the news that you have defeated Cornwallis in Yorktown and that he had surrendered, I have decided on another idea. A little rebellion now and then can be good. This rebellion in particular have shown that they are not afraid of Britain and that they can fight back and withstand the relentless foulness that comes from across the ocean. A good portion of our liberty can be recognized as your doing. You were the one that led the army across river and forest. You were the one that sat atop his horse and yelled orders. You were the one that held the sword that was once gripped by Lord Cornwallis. You may not know this. In fact, I'm sure you don't. But Mr. John Hancock sent me a letter a few years ago, a while before the death of my wife. He told me that you would not listen to his orders to make a move because he was from Massachusetts. He told me that I was the one to inform you of his orders. Then he told me in a way that made it seem better than it was, that you were the one that would triumph. I sat there, rebuckled my shoes, and smiled. I thought at the time that John Hancock was a fool, but as soon as I read his letter, I could see he wasn't. He might have the dullest mind that a fellow Virginian could persuade you to engage in battle. I could see John now, sitting in some plush chair thinking, Washington did make the move, and what a move he made. General Washington, you are some kind of man. Just stop reading for a moment. Recollect what you have done for this country. You have defied the power of tyranny, and replied by leading a country to liberty. As a modest man, you will say, Thomas Jefferson, you know that I only did a small sum of that. The men were the ones that fought it out. They deserve credit too, but you were the ones that led them, that made a figure of a leader. George, I can think of no other man that would better lead our country. And I'll also give a little more to this map too. And so I wrote short biographies on each of these men and what they did and how they contributed to others. And there's some of the stories of these men, while I was looking over them for once more, I could see that they really loved the cause and that they needed, some of them are really trying and touching. Like one man named Abraham Clark, his son was being terribly mistreated by the British. He was captured, but Mr. Clark didn't say a word. He just, about his son's mistreatment, until later when he gave this really powerful speech that said his son had been sexually abused by the British and he was only given food through a keyhole at each meal. And so that was the only time that he stood up and said, this is wrong. We either need to be treated better by the British or we need to be free. And then he gave further points. So I thank you for having me here. Out of character.